Hello, today's lesson is 3-7, solving inequalities involving rational numbers. We are going to solve these like normal, except now we have rational numbers in them, so decimals, fractions. You know how to solve an inequality. You want to isolate the variable, and then it does ask us to graph at the end. Make sure you simplify all answers as well. So for the first one, we want to do the opposite of subtracting 4/5, so we're going to add 4/5 to both sides. Now the interesting part about this inequality is that when we add 4/5, 7/10 and 4/5 don't have the same denominator. So we have to find a common denominator, which 5 goes into 10, so it makes it very easy. We're going to multiply the second fraction by 2/2, which is the equivalent of 1, making it 8/10, and 8/10 plus 7/10 would be 15/10, and I'm going to go ahead and simplify that as well. 3/2, which is 1.5 or 1.5. We're going to graph it, and depending on what your teacher asks you for, I'm going to go ahead and do 1.5 and do a number like 2 and a number like 1 before it. And because it's greater than, I'm going to have an open circle. It's not or equal to, so the circle is open. And then it's bigger than that, so the arrow is going to point towards the 2. But depending on how your teacher asks you to graph, that may be an acceptable graph. You may have to use 0 on your graph. It just depends on what they want from you. In the second one, the opposite of multiplying by negative 2.4 is going to be to divide by negative 2.4. Now, there's a couple things that should alarm to you. When you're dividing by a negative or multiplying by a negative, you're going to flip your sign. So instead of less than, it's then going to be greater than. That happens only when you multiply or divide by a negative. And we learned that before, but it's good to refresh your memory in case that happens. Now, it has to be the piece you're moving, not the 72. If the 72 is negative, it would have no bearing on the flipping. Excuse me. So now we're going to divide. I'm going to use long division. The piece that I'm dividing by, I don't want it to be a decimal. So I'm going to loop out of it, which is the equivalent of multiplying by 10 if I'm only looping once. And the 72, I have to do the same. So that's going to make it 720 and then 24. I had to add a 0 because 72's decimal is after the 2. 24 goes into 72. That would be, I believe, 3 times 0, and we're going to have a whole bunch of zeros there, so 30. So C is going to be greater than 30. Now, what am I forgetting here? We divided by negative. A positive divided by negative is a negative, so negative 30. C is greater than negative 30. I'm going to have that on my number line. I'm going to have negative 29, and I'm going to have negative 31. A number bigger and a number smaller. Open circle because it's greater than, and then I'm going to have an arrow pointing to the right. Okay, we have 2 more to go. Solve and graph. The next 2 I'm multiplying by 1/3, so the opposite of that is dividing by 1/3. And our rules for dividing by fractions are keep, switch, flip, so I'm going to keep the first one. Hello, I must have dropped off a little bit there, so I have to kind of go back. I'm sorry about that. So M is less than, and we're going to have keep, switch, flip. So negative 5/9 times 3/1 now. And then I'm going to multiply the numerator. So negative 15, 9 times 1 is 9. I'm going to do some simplifying here. They're both divisible by 3, so negative 5/3. And then depending on how your teacher likes his or her answer, you can write it as a mixed number, negative 1 2/3. Also, I'm going to put negative 1 2/3 on our number line, and I'm going to have it really close to 2, negative 2, because it's closer to negative 2 than it is to negative 1, just to kind of show where that number would be in reality. It's going to have an open circle, and it's less than, so going to be arrow to the left. And then the last one, we're actually going to finish off with an easier one. We're going to add 16.3 to both sides, the opposite of subtracting. 16.3, when I isolate the variable, we want n by itself. So we have carry the 1, 9, 49. n is less than 49. And we're going to have 49 on here. We're going to have 50. And we're also going to have 48. Open circle, and it's less than 49, so pointing towards the 48. All right, thank you.